So with the news of a Marvel game being in production at NetherRealm Studios, I think it's the perfect time to actually do a wish list for said game. Now, I'm going to be doing two wish lists in separate videos. Today's is going to be for a Marvel vs. DC game. While I don't agree entirely with them going this route to begin with for the first Marvel game, it's still very likely because of how much money it would make compared to a Marvel-only game, because it's Marvel and DC. That's just going to make more money, inevitably. So we're going to be doing a structure of 16 characters per roster. We're going to do a 3-character combat pack with one guest, and that is usually revealed around the time of launch, right before launch of every NRS game. And we're going to be doing a pre-order DLC, because while I still don't agree with it and I fucking hate it, it always happens, especially now. We have one in MKX, MK11, Injustice 2, I think. Yeah, with Darkseid. So that is the structure of this video. And it's very unfortunate that I'm doing that. Writing this was unfortunate, putting all the characters down, because there's so many base characters from each faction, Marvel and DC. So many base characters that have to be there that it really limits everything. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the Marvel side, because that's the new one and that's the one I'm really excited for, so let's jump into it. So we'll start with the basic ones, the ones that you know have to be there. People are gonna riot. Captain America, Iron Man, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and the Hulk. We know those have to be there. But now that we've gotten those out of the way, of course, they could play in very cool different ways. Wolverine, I'd like to see some Marvel vs. Capcom aspects come into this game with some of their fighting styles, some of the different ways you see them fight in those games, you know, across all 4 of them, I believe there were. So there's ways to make these characters cool, but they are the cookie cutter characters that have to be in the game because it's Marvel. Now we move on to Black Panther. Black Panther, of course, he is a really cool character, and I really think this could be a great way to honor Chadwick Boseman, if nothing else. I don't know if they still have scans or if they can do anything with the scans to actually have him play the Black Panther character in the game. Of course, it wouldn't be his voice, but there are plenty of people, voice actors out there that could probably mimic his voice well enough, and that would be a good way to immortalize him in this fighting game that will inevitably be one of the most popular fighting games and games ever made to do with either brand of comic. And then we got Mr. Fantastic. Now, I put some of these characters that have a premiere skin with them. There's some for the Marvel and there's some for DC. They don't always correlate to Marvel and DC, like a Marvel character having a DC premiere skin or vice versa. This one just happens to be Mr. Fantastic, and of course his premiere skin would be Plastic Man. I'm not saying that, you know, they wouldn't have to change some of the animations to fit the character better, but that is a lot easier than making a whole other character to actually have in the game, and plus it frees up a slot. So those extra animations go a lot further with the fan base because we feel like we're getting more. So Mr. Fantastic with a Plastic Man premiere skin. And then we move on to a character that most people would probably consider cookie cutter character, like has to be there for Marvel, but I really don't, and that is Thor. I love Thor, I want him in the game, but I think he's a character that could come as DLC or be hyped up for the next game. I don't think he's a necessary character, because even in a lot of the Marvel stories, like the popular Marvel stories, Thor doesn't exactly play the biggest part. If we go back to the MCU, yes, I know it's the MCU, he wasn't even seen in Civil War, so they're obviously okay with not having him in every major thing there is, and he's even not appeared in a lot of mid-2000s comic runs for Marvel, because I believe his character died. He did have a big part in Civil War where an android of him was created and he killed Gigantic Man. But yeah, I don't think Thor is necessary, but I'd like to see him. And then we move on to a character that a lot of you only MCU fans probably won't know about, because Marvel has still yet to do a fucking movie about him, and that is Black Bolt from the Inhumans, the leader of the Inhumans. I think this character has some really cool powers. You could probably do a Black Canary premiere skin for him, probably take a lot of animations because they're gonna have to do height adjustments and everything else for the character, and also a female model premiere skin with that. I don't really remember if they've done that before, but I would really like to see Black Bolt. The fact that he cannot speak without destroying everything, and if he was to scream, he could level entire cities. That's a very interesting aspect to a character, and I'd really like to see how they played it in the game. Would it be like Black Canary? Well, probably not, because all it takes is a whisper for him to blow someone 100 yards away. So I'd be really intrigued to see NRS's take on this character. Now we move on to a character that needs some NRS love, and that is Miss Marvel / Captain Marvel. I'd like to see Captain Marvel in the game, but I feel like they could do a Miss Marvel premiere skin for Captain Marvel, or vice versa. Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel premiere skin for Miss Marvel. But Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, is actually a really cool character, and a lot of people who've recently gotten to know the character because they don't read comics or they don't care much for the character, never really cared to care much. Kamala Khan, she's actually a very interesting character, and because of the Marvel Avengers game, it's really led everyone to believe she's not an interesting character. So I'd love to see what NRS could do with this character. I know we are seeing a live-action adaptation of Miss Marvel coming soon from the MCU. We just got the costume leak for it, but I'd really like to see this character in an NRS take and see the love that they give to this character. Then we move on to Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch, complete personal preference for me. Yes, WandaVision hyped the character up a lot, but if you read a lot of the older comics, if you're familiar with the House of M, and a lot of stories again in the mid-2000s and even the late 80s, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver actually played a very, very big part in a lot of those stories, and even shaped a lot of the Marvel Universe in the mid-2000s. So I definitely think she deserves a spot in a big, Marvel game, which she hasn't ever had before in really any Marvel game. I don't think she was in one of the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games. If she was in either, she hasn't really gotten a lot of love, and I think it's time for that to change. And again, it's another thing that I'd like to see NRS's take on. Doctor Strange with a Dr. Fate premiere skin is another personal preference for me. I think this character could be interchanged out for someone more interesting, maybe add another female character in, because I don't have a lot on here, but maybe have this character interchanged. But I really like Doctor Strange. He's a very interesting character. He always has been. He's one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe, and he hasn't really gotten the love that he deserves either. The Doctor Strange movie from the MCU was great. Benedict Cumberbatch, I'd love to see him in the game. If they could get him into the game, I'd love to see this character in the game. But again, this is an interchangeable one. Yes, you do need the magic aspect, because that is a very big part. Dr. Fate plays a very big part in Injustice, and Doctor Strange is usually a very big part of any Marvel story, but I still think he's interchangeable, maybe DLC here or there or whatever. But either way, I'd like to see a premiere skin for either or. If the DC character comes, Dr. Fate, premiere skin with Doctor Strange, and vice versa, of course. An X-Men character that you really can't make a game without. There's a lot not on here. There's only three X-Men characters on this list. Well, 4 technically. And the next one is Jean Grey. Jean Grey, the Dark Phoenix, a very big X-Men character, very big Marvel character. A lot of stories have revolved around her in the Marvel Universe, especially the Dark Phoenix aspect of her, and I definitely think she deserves a spot in a Marvel fighting game. She's always played a very big part in the Marvel vs. Capcom games, except for Infinite, which that goes for a lot of these Marvel characters in Infinite. But Jean Grey is a very cool character, usually with a very cool moveset, and I'd love to see her in this game. Moving on to the character that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite actually got right, Venom. Yes, Venom. I think we're all in agreement here, no disputes or anything. Venom just needs to be in this game. I'd love to see Spider-Man versus Venom, and just Venom versus everybody, and what they do with the Black Symbiote in this game. It's the one good thing, besides the gameplay. Gameplay was amazing in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but there weren't a lot of characters. Them adding Venom to that game was a big hell yes, and I'd love to see NRS bring him into this game as well. Now moving on to the next few characters, they're mainly villains. We do have a few characters in the DLC section that you're probably wondering where the hell they are in the actual base sections. Don't worry, they're in the DLC sections, we'll get there. But the next character is Magneto. You can't have a fighting game with Marvel without Magneto. He's been a staple in every Marvel vs. Capcom game except for Infinite forever. He's a very popular character in the fighting game community especially, and he's just a very cool character in Marvel Comics. If there is a Marvel fighting game, there needs to be a Magneto, and that leads me into a very interesting pick in my eyes, a character that I don't think a lot of people would have picked, but when you look at Injustice and you think of the gameplay of Injustice, put Dr. Octopus on that stage. the stage of a fighting game. Those octopus arms. Yes, it would probably be a little Brainiac-ish, and you could probably do a Brainiac premiere skin. Maybe it would just have to change the way Brainiac moved, because Doc Ock uses, you know, the legs to move. But Dr. Octopus, man, I'd love to see this character in a Marvel fighting game. And that moves us to our DC characters, and again, I'm just gonna blow through the cookie cutter characters: Batman, Superman, Supergirl, the 3 staple characters of Injustice. You know they're gonna be there, there's no getting around it. Injustice 2 makes Supergirl a staple character. Superman and Batman, that's a given. Now we move to the Flash with a Quicksilver premiere skin. I think the Flash is another base game character. Like, he has to be there. He's a big part of the Justice League, and of course, you know, most of, if not all, the Justice League are on this list, because DC has this really weird thing of having amazing villains. I almost ended up with more villains on this list than heroes. The Justice League have always just kind of been the staple. Those are the main characters, those are the ones that get the most love, so those are the ones that usually end up in most of the games. There's the other side characters here and there, but the Justice League takes up most of the list along with the villains. So that leads us into the Flash and Quicksilver. Quicksilver premiere skin, very easy to do. Change the effects of, you know, what happens when he runs. Very easy, simple to do. You have Quicksilver and the Flash in the game. It's not that hard to do. Throw Reverse Flash in again as a second premiere skin. I'm a very happy boy. And then, I don't know if I said it, but Wonder Woman, again, base game character. You can't have a DC fighting game without Wonder Woman, because people are going to want the Justice League, and you're going to get a lot of fucking lashback if you don't have Wonder Woman in the game. You're going to get called a bunch of names. And then we move on to a character that I think is interchangeable in my opinion, or at least the DCEU has made it seem that way. I kind of disagree, but I can see where he could be interchangeable for some other characters. But again, DC has this really weird thing of the villains are more interesting, so I couldn't really think of more heroes. Green Lantern with a Sinestro premiere skin. I don't think you need Sinestro and Green Lantern in the game when they have these same powers, especially with all of these other characters on here taking up slots. So give Green Lantern a Sinestro premiere skin, make it Hal Jordan, give him another premiere skin for John Stewart. I think we're good to go. Then we move on to Lex Luthor. We haven't seen Lex Luthor in the game, in the fighting games since Injustice 1. I didn't think he was necessarily like the best character, like he was the coolest character. He's just a big bald dude in a big metal suit, which, I mean, okay, some people are into that shit. I'm not particularly, but my reasoning for him being on here is mainly for story purposes. If there's something big, as big as like 2 universes of superheroes that have never met before clashing, and it's not just like Earth 1 and Earth 2, it's Earth 1 from this universe and Earth 1 from another universe, or whatever else, however the hell they would explain that, 2 realities merging. Lex Luther is of course going to be a part of that. He's of course going to have his big bald shiny ass head right smack dab up the ass of it. There's no getting around that. So he's got to be in the game in my opinion, because he's a very interesting story character. And that moves us on to Firestorm. Personal pick, you could definitely switch this character out for probably any one of other characters, Black Manta, so many other different characters you could switch Firestorm out for, but I'm a Firestorm main in Injustice 2. I love Firestorm. I want Firestorm in the game. It's my fucking list. Leave me alone. Then we have Darkseid. Again, it's like Lex Luther, not necessarily the most interesting character to me personally, but there's something like 2 realities merging going on, 2 realities clashing going on. Darkseid is going to have that big old cranium brain up in the mix of it, right with Lex Luther, so he's just got to be there. Character I'd like to see return is Shazam. I put Shazam as the base character and Black Adam as the premiere skin, because we had Black Adam in Injustice 2 and not Shazam, and we didn't even get a premiere skin for Shazam, but I don't want to do Black Adam dirty like that, because I like Black Adam. It could be a Rock premiere skin for all I give a shit. But Shazam, he's a boy that definitely needs love. He got shafted in Injustice 1, didn't get brought back in Injustice 2 in any way, shape, or form. I think he needs to come back in this. I'm a big fan of Shazam, and I know after the Shazam movie, which I wasn't personally a fan of, I didn't really have as much fun as everyone else, a lot of people did love that movie, and a lot of people are now fans of Shazam the way I've been for years, so I'd love to see this character come back. Another character, cookie cutter, gotta be there, Joker. Let's get him out of the way. they could do some interesting things with him. They always have, but you know Joker's going to be there. Next up is actually the one character that I put on here that might surprise some people, and that is Red Tornado. Red Tornado has been one of my favorite characters in the DC universe since the Young Justice show, man. He got so much love in that show, and he was really, you know, you can see how cool of a character he was. Now, I wish they could do a Red Tornado Ultron kind of thing, premiere skin, but I doubt it because, you know, Red Tornado is a completely different character aside from being an android. So, I'd love if they did go that far with the premiere skins to, like, change animations and everything else just to meet the character limit deadline and still have all of these different characters in the game just by, you know, premiere skins and shit, but I doubt that's actually going to happen. But Red Tornado is a character I definitely like to see base game in this game. Up next is Hawkgirl. Hawkgirl is a very, very cool character. If you've ever seen the old Justice League cartoon from like the early 2000s, very early 2000s, you know how cool Hawkgirl is. Everybody loves Hawkgirl. Hawkman, not so much. I don't really care for Carter, but Hawkgirl, all damn day. We need more female characters in the game, and I think Hawkgirl is just one of the best characters for that. Next up, kind of cookie cutter at this point, like she kind of has to be there. Harley Quinn. I know specifically if I didn't put this character in my list, I'm gonna get slapped by my fiance because she's a huge fan of Harley Quinn. I'm sure if she played the game, she'd want the character in there. And if she watches me play the game, I'm sure I'm going to be forced to play this character. But Harley Quinn, everybody loves Harley Quinn, especially since Margot Robbie's take on the character. Not the best movies. I really loved Birds of Prey. Suicide Squad was okay, but Margot Robbie's take on Harley Quinn, a lot of people have grown to love the character more than they already did from the old Batman, the animated series show. Like, she's just a cool character, and I think she needs to be there. A character that I don't think is interchangeable, but a lot of people do think is interchangeable, not so much since Jason Momoa came in, but Aquaman. I want him in the game, but a lot of people would switch him out for a lot of other characters, but Aquaman's a cool character. Read some Aquaman, especially New 52. Watch the movie if you haven't. It's a really good movie. I think Aquaman should be there, but that takes us into the pre-order DLC and the actual DLCs. Now, the pre-order character, in my opinion, is Thanos. I know it's a Marvel character, but either way, you had to pick a side, and they can't do 2 pre-order DLCs, or at that point, I will riot. But Thanos, he's a character that I left off of the main list. They've always done villains as these pre-order DLCs. In Injustice 2, it was Darkseid, MKX, it was Goro, and MK11, it was Shao Kahn. So I stayed true with another villain and gave the new side to the, you know, NRS fighting game series, you know, Marvel. I gave them some love with the pre-order DLC. Thanos, he's a really cool character. I'd love to see Josh Brolin come back and play the character in the game. That would be sick. I know we're not going to see a lot of these characters from the MCU or the DCEU play these characters in the game because they always get their own voice actors, you know, face capture artists and shit like that. Models, not artists. So I doubt it. I love the one I want and we need is Chadwick Boseman for Black Panther, but you know, regardless, Thanos would be really cool pre-order DLC. And then we move on to the DC first combat pack character, and that is the Atom with an Ant-Man premiere skin. Or no, you can't really do vice versa. I mean, well, you can do vice versa for either of these because I gave both of them a premiere skin. But the Atom with an Ant-Man premiere skin, again, they'd have to change probably some of the special moves, the fatal, if they're willing to go that far to actually make them make it worth saying, hey, that's Ant-Man, or hey, that's Atom. But I really feel like if they wanted to put the love in and give that much back to the community and really be on the community, like the consumer side, and win us over big time to the point where we're shelling out money for pre-orders for the next DLC, are these premiere skins. Find a way to put more characters in the game than the limit that you've been given, and what better way is to change some, you know, animations for premiere skins. And that leads us to our next one, the one that you probably were all screaming about once I got through all the Marvel characters. Deadpool. Of course, Deadpool. How you get more people to buy the DLC characters? Make Deadpool a DLC character. I'm still making this list with a business mindset in mind. Characters and tactics that they're realistically probably going to use and that you might even see. And that is Deadpool with a Deathstroke premiere skin. Now, I'm probably going to leave it as Deadpool with a Deathstroke premiere skin because if they don't go all out with the premiere skins and they kind of shit out on it and just go with, you know, even though they did not do that in Injustice 2, there were actually really cool premiere skins for the characters, and they changed a lot. Deadpool, I'd like to see Deadpool get the most love if they don't do as good with the premiere skins. And then the guest character, a character we wanted in Injustice 2, a character we've wanted in Injustice 3, a character I've even heard people say they want in fucking Mortal Kombat 11. Dr. Manhattan. The Watchmen officially had their big crossover with the DC Universe. I don't know if I haven't read it. I haven't read DC Comics in a long time. But apparently, they've interacted. The Watchmen and the DC Universe have interacted in canon. So what better character to bring into the game and have them interact with the Marvel Universe now than Dr. Manhattan? I'd love to see how this character played. I'm a big fan of the Watchmen. Admittedly, Zack Snyder's take on the Watchmen, didn't read the comics. That's one time where I'll admit that and, be honest about it. But Dr. Manhattan, I'd love to see this character in the game. And that is my list. I haven't looked at the Audacity recording the whole time I've been recording this. I don't know how long this shit is. So if you've watched all the way to the end, give me an AO in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think about my list in the comments down below as well. There's a lot of characters that unfortunately, due to the situation of a crossover, we're not going to get to see in this game. Characters that we've wanted to see in Injustice for a while that, I just didn't have room for. Characters like Beast Boy, characters like John Constantine. There was a lot of characters on the Marvel side like Cyclops and Beast and The Thing, Johnny, what was his name? Johnny Storm, that's him. Flame On Boy, Ghost Rider. I mean, those are just characters I'd like to see, but there are so many base characters that you have to see for each side that it really hogs up a lot of the space, and I'd love to see how NRS is going to handle this. Maybe they'll go all out and give 25 characters per roster. We don't know. Maybe they'll go balls to the wall, but that's going to take a hell of a budget, and I highly doubt it, but we will see. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for this video. I will see you guys very soon for the Marvel-only list. I'm very excited to make that one because I love Marvel, and I have a lot of crazy characters that you probably won't see coming that I'd love to see in a Marvel NRS fighting game. And even if it is a Marvel vs. DC game that comes first, we can keep this list for the sequel that hopefully will be a Marvel-only fighting game. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host. My name is Tug, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.